Have you ever made a decision and felt completely confident about it, only to later wonder if you really had any choice at all? What if everything you think you're choosing has already been decided? This question has haunted philosophers for thousands of years, but a Buddhist monk and teacher have offered a perspective that will completely reshape how you understand your own life, your decisions, and your freedom. Stay with me as we explore one of the most mind-bending concepts in spiritual philosophy that challenges everything you thought you knew about free will, consciousness, and personal responsibility. Before we dive deep, I want you to think about something simple. You ate breakfast this morning, right? But here's the question nobody asks. Who really tasted that food? Was it your mouth, your tongue, your mind, your consciousness, or perhaps something even more fundamental? Most people never question this because the answer seems obvious. But when you actually sit with this question, something extraordinary happens. You begin to realize that the obvious answer might be completely wrong. This is exactly where our journey begins today. We're going to explore a revolutionary Buddhist perspective that suggests everything you believe about your consciousness, your choices, and your control over your life might be constructed from misunderstandings stacked upon misunderstandings. And more importantly, we're going to discover what happens to your anxiety, your guilt, and your sense of responsibility when you truly understand the nature of causality and predetermination. The premise is deceptively simple, but the implications are staggering. According to this Buddhist teaching, the universe operates on a principle called dependent origination, or what some call the chain of cause and effect. This isn't fatalism in the traditional sense. It's something far more subtle and profound. Everything that happens, including your thoughts, your feelings, and your decisions, arises from previous causes and conditions. Nothing emerges from nowhere. Nothing happens in isolation. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If everything is determined by what came before it, then when you make a choice, that choice is the inevitable result of circumstances, experiences, and conditions you didn't create and can't fully control. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose the culture you were born into. You didn't choose your genetics, your early childhood experiences, or the countless moments that shaped your brain before you were even aware you had a brain. Yet all of these things determine how you think and what you will choose. So when you sit down to make what feels like a free choice, you're actually experiencing the unfolding of a chain of causality that began long before you were born. But here's the paradox that most people miss. Recognizing this doesn't make you powerless. In fact, it does something even more interesting. It shifts your entire relationship with guilt, shame, regret, and responsibility in ways that can actually free you. Let's talk about consciousness for a moment, because this is where Buddhist philosophy really diverges from Western thinking. Most of us assume that consciousness is a single, unified thing. We think of consciousness as a kind of light that illuminates our experience, and whatever that light shines on, we're aware of. But Buddhist teaching suggests something radically different. Consciousness isn't a thing at all. It's a process. It's not something that exists independently. Think about it this way. When you taste food, you don't actually experience taste directly. Instead, there's a cascade of processes happening. Your taste buds send signals to your brain. Your brain processes those signals and creates the sensation of taste. But here's the crucial part. The taste buds don't taste. The signals don't taste. The brain doesn't taste. So who or what is actually tasting? The Buddhist answer is both simpler and more complex than you might expect. There is no separate taster. There is only tasting happening. This might sound like semantic wordplay, but it's not. This distinction changes everything about how you understand yourself. You're not a fixed entity experiencing consciousness. You are consciousness arising moment by moment based on conditions. You are a process, not a thing. And processes can't be blamed or praised for existing the way they do, any more than you can blame water for flowing downhill. But wait, you're probably thinking right now, if I'm just a process determined by previous causes, then what's the point of trying? Why should I make any effort at all? Why should I care about being a good person or working hard or pursuing my goals if it's all already determined anyway? This is perhaps the most important objection to this philosophy, and the answer is both surprising and liberating. The teaching addresses this directly through what we might call the paradox of effort within determinism. Here's how it works. Yes, your actions are determined, but determination doesn't mean passivity. Your actions are determined by you. Your effort is part of the causal chain. Your decision to work hard, to practice, to improve, to learn, to help others, these choices are part of what determines what happens next in the universe. You're not separate from causality. You're embedded within it. You are one of the causes. Think of it like a river. The river's flow is determined by gravity, the shape of the landscape, and the amount of water it contains. But the river doesn't resist or surrender to these conditions. The river is these conditions expressing themselves. Similarly, you are the expression of all the causes and conditions that have come together to create you. And when those causes include your values, your understanding, and your effort, then your choices matter tremendously, even within a determined universe. This reframing dissolves one of the deepest sources of human suffering, the belief that you should have chosen differently. Think about how much guilt most people carry. Regret about the past haunts our nights and poisons our peace. We replay conversations and decisions, thinking, I should have done that differently. But this teaching suggests something radical. If you had done it differently, it would have required you to have been different. And you couldn't have been different than you were because you were the product of everything that made you who you are. This doesn't mean consequences don't matter or that you shouldn't strive to be better. It means something more nuanced. It means that the guilt and the regret are themselves based on a misunderstanding of how causality works. The regret assumes you could have chosen otherwise while being exactly the person you were. But that's logically impossible. If the previous conditions made you choose A, then you couldn't have chosen B while remaining yourself. Once you truly grasp this, something miraculous happens to your mind. The crushing weight of guilt and self-blame begins to lift, not because you stop caring about your actions, but because you recognize that punishing yourself now for what you did when you were less aware, less informed, less evolved than you are today is nonsensical. You can learn from your mistakes. You can commit to doing better, but the suffering of self-recrimination becomes optional. Now, let's talk about what this means for the future. If the past is determined by conditions you didn't choose, what about the future? Here again, the same principle applies, but with one crucial addition. Future causality includes what you do right now. Your current effort is part of what determines your future. Your current practice, your current learning, your current choices, these are the causes that will generate your future conditions. This is where Buddhist practice comes in. Meditation, ethical conduct, wisdom practice, these aren't about achieving some impossible escape from causality. They're about aligning yourself with causes that generate well-being, clarity, and peace. When you practice mindfulness, you're changing the causes that will generate your experience in the next moment. When you cultivate compassion, you're introducing a cause that will ripple outward in ways you can't fully predict or control, but that you can still intentionally plant. There's a famous metaphor in Buddhist teaching about someone seeking their lost necklace. They search everywhere, climbing mountains, exploring dark forests, asking for help, when all the while the necklace is already around their neck. The teaching here is that people search endlessly for enlightenment, for awakening, for peace, when these things are already present in the very nature of existence itself. They're not hidden somewhere you have to reach. They're intrinsic to reality. What keeps us from recognizing this? According to this philosophy, it's primarily ignorance and attachment to a false sense of self. We believe we are fixed, unchanging entities who possess consciousness like we possess a body. We think we're the owners of our actions and entitled to the fruits of our labors. We believe our views and opinions are absolutely true and that others who disagree are simply wrong. These beliefs create enormous amounts of suffering. When you truly understand dependent origination, something shifts in your perception of reality itself. You begin to see light and darkness not as absolute opposites, but as arising together, each dependent on the other. You begin to see yourself and others not as enemies competing for limited good, but as expressions of the same universe trying to understand itself. You begin to see your suffering and others' suffering not as separate problems, but as manifestations of the same fundamental misunderstanding. There's a particular kind of peace that comes from this understanding. It's not the peace of resignation or apathy. It's the peace of ceasing to struggle against the nature of reality. It's like finally going with the current instead of swimming against it. Most of us spend our entire lives resisting what's actually true about existence. We resist the fact that we age. We resist the fact that people we love will die. We resist the fact that our plans will change. We resist the fact that we don't have perfect control. This resistance is exhausting. It's the source of most of our stress and anxiety. When you align yourself with what's actually true, that causality operates in the universe, that you are embedded in this causal process, that you don't have ultimate control over anything, something unexpected happens. You relax, you stop wasting energy on futile resistance, and paradoxically, you become more effective at actually causing positive change. Consider how the Buddha lived according to this understanding. He didn't rule a kingdom. He didn't accumulate possessions. He didn't live in luxury while trying to help others. Instead, he lived simply, practiced diligently, and dedicated his life to teaching others who came to him. He didn't assume responsibility for whether people would understand his teachings or follow them. He didn't believe that his value as a person depended on converting everyone he met. He planted seeds and trusted the process of causality to work itself out. What this created was a remarkable kind of freedom. He was free from the anxiety that comes from believing you have to control everything. He was free from the resentment that comes from comparing your efforts to your results. He was free from the arrogance that comes from believing your way is the only right way. And paradoxically, this freedom made him extraordinarily influential and helpful, not because he was trying to be influential, but because he aligned himself with causes that naturally generate wisdom and benefit. Many people misunderstand this teaching and think it means passivity or fatalism. They assume that if everything is determined, they might as well sit around doing nothing. But this misses the entire point. Within a determined universe, your effort is still real and still matters. Your practice is still real and still matters. Your choices are still real and still matter. What changes is not whether these things matter, but why they matter and how you relate to them. The teacher whose voice we've been exploring throughout this discussion spent years practicing this understanding. He taught that one common source of suffering is the belief that you should have done better, that you made a mistake that could have been avoided. But this belief is based on a logical impossibility. If circumstances were exactly as they were, and you were exactly as you were, then your action was the only action you could have taken. To believe you should have chosen differently is to believe you should have been a different person. What changes when you integrate this understanding? First, you lose the capacity for unproductive guilt and self-blame. This doesn't mean consequences disappear. It means you can acknowledge that something didn't work the way you hoped, learn from it, commit to different actions going forward, and release the suffering that comes from wishing the past had been different. You conserve your emotional energy for what actually matters, learning and growth. Second, you develop genuine compassion for others who make mistakes or hurt you. You recognize that their actions, like yours, arose from causes and conditions they didn't fully choose. This doesn't mean you let people walk all over you or that you don't maintain boundaries. It means you can hold people accountable for their actions while simultaneously recognizing that they were doing the best they could with the awareness they had at that moment. Third, you align your effort with understanding rather than with control. Instead of trying to force outcomes, you focus on cultivating the causes that naturally generate the outcomes you value. If you want to be a better person, you practice virtue. If you want to be happier, you cultivate gratitude and compassion. If you want to help others, you develop wisdom and skills. You trust that these causes will generate their natural fruits. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, you stop dividing your attention between what is and what you think should be. This division is one of the primary sources of human suffering. We're experiencing this moment but simultaneously wishing it were different. We're with our loved ones but thinking about how the interaction could be better. We're working on a project but judging whether we're working hard enough. This constant split attention creates suffering and diminishes effectiveness. When you truly accept the nature of causality and your place within it, this division collapses. You're fully present with what is. You're fully engaged in what you're doing. And from this unified attention comes both peace and effectiveness. This is why the Buddha sat under the tree and simply looked at the world, not through resignation or defeat, but through complete acceptance of reality as it is. The ultimate paradox at the heart of this teaching is this. You become most free when you stop believing you have absolute freedom. You become most capable of positive change when you stop resisting the determined nature of existence. You become most genuinely compassionate when you stop blaming yourself and others for not being different than you are. And you become most effective when you stop trying to control outcomes and focus instead on cultivating causes. This is not a pessimistic philosophy. It's not fatalism or nihilism. It's actually deeply optimistic. It says that you are not trapped in a predetermined destiny like a puppet on strings. Instead, you are an active participant in the causal process. Your awareness, your effort, your practice. These are real causes that generate real effects. What's pessimistic is the Western view that you should be able to control everything through willpower, and that failure to do so reflects your weakness or failure. What's actually liberating is the Buddhist understanding that you're part of an interconnected web of causality, that you have real power to influence this web through your thoughts and actions, and that you don't have to carry the impossible burden of controlling everything. You can do your best, trust the process, and find peace regardless of outcomes. As you go through your day, try this experiment. Notice moments when you're caught in guilt about the past or anxiety about the future. Notice how that guilt assumes you could have chosen differently while being exactly the person you were. Notice how that anxiety assumes you should be able to control outcomes that depend on countless factors outside your control. And then see what happens when you release that assumption. See what happens when you accept that you did the best you could with what you knew, that you're doing the best you can right now, and that the future will unfold according to causes and conditions you're part of but don't fully control. This understanding is not something you can simply believe your way into. It's something you have to realize through practice and direct experience. Meditation reveals this truth experientially. Ethical practice reveals it through the results it generates. Study reveals it intellectually, but only when all three come together do you truly transform your relationship with free will, responsibility, and peace. The journey toward this understanding is not about becoming passive or giving up. It's about redirecting your energy from futile resistance toward creative participation. It's about trading the anxiety of needing to control everything for the freedom of accepting what is. And it's about discovering that this acceptance is not weakness, but the greatest strength. The strength to be fully human, fully present, and fully alive in a universe that operates according to beautiful, logical, and ultimately compassionate principles of cause and effect.